Hello travelers, Boardman21 here. Today got a minion build for you. This is going to be the Bone Golem Necromancer using the Bone Shatter ability, which is what will be procced every time that your Bone Golem is hit by either you or an enemy. Now this build's been around for a while. I have seen other people play it. It's something I've always wanted to try and just hadn't. So today I thought that I would play it and give you my version of it. With that, this is a very powerful build. It does a ton of damage. It has decent survivability. The only thing I haven't been able to do myself yet is beat tier 4 Jorah, but that's because I keep making rookie mistakes and standing in the damage. The other thing about this build is while it's a little bit slower, it's not a speedrunning build. That can be fixed hopefully later when they fix the bug where your Bone Golem gets graphically disoriented after a few teleports. So the new experimental fix are inside the 𝐒𝐿eton tree, which allows you to have minions teleport whenever you use a transversal skill. Really makes this build really smooth because every time that you use Transplant, your Bone Golem will go with you, instantly land. You can hit him with a Rip Blood, which Transplant can also cast, as well as Bone Curse, allowing him to do a ton of damage the moment you teleport right into a pack. However, again, after a few teleports, that tends to get bugged out. You can resummon your Bone Golem, but that gets really annoying. And I know that some people have ran into this issue, which is another reason why we kind of stayed away from it for a bit. But we're going to go ahead and play without those affixes for now. Again, those will just turn it into more of a speedrunner and be able to go much smoother, faster through echoes and such. But for bossing and just going through echoes, you can still get through them pretty quick. It does great damage, it has good survivability, so you'll be able to take on bosses with relative ease. Now this only has one unique in the entire build. It's not mandatory. Your survivability is still going to come from using Rip Blood to generate health back to yourself, as well as whenever your Bone Golem does a hit, he'll generate health for you. However, the Twisted Heart allows you to then convert that health that you have into ward, so you'll be able to have your health being replenished from the Bone Golem and from Rip Blood, as well as every time you cast the necrotic skill, which in this one will be Transplant and Rip Blood, it will then turn some of that into ward, which will give you even better survivability. Here in the Orbis fight, you can see we're sitting at 3 to 4k ward. You can always run a low life version as well, but with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and get into the skills and just how this build works. For skills, I'm running Transplant, Bone Curse, Dreadshade, Rip Blood, and Summon Bone Golem. And there are +1 to some of these. The +1 on our staff gives +1 to minion skills, and then we also, with the Twisted Heart, get +1 to elemental and necrotic skills, and we have necrotic skills in here. So for Transplant, we've got 3 points in Acolyte's Fervor. This is going to give us haste and frenzy after we transplant, which allows us to cast Rip Blood much quicker or to run much faster if we need to get out of the fight. 1 point in Dance of Blood. We'll cast 1 Rip Blood. 1 point in Rain of Blood gives us a detonation. What we really care about is the 1 point in Doombringer, so that we cast Bone Curse around the target after we arrive. Now remember, after we arrive, eventually we're going to be able to use that affix to have minions teleport with us, and that's going to bring the Bone Golem with us, which then when we use Bone Curse will affect all the enemies in that area, which is really nice and going to help the Bone Golem do a little extra damage. We also have 1 point in Scarlet Rain, 1 point in Ethereal Body to convert Rip Blood or Transplant over into necrotic damage. This will give you the +1 point for it. Then we got 3 points in Fleeting Form for the increased cast speed to use it, and then of course the cooldown recovery so we can use it more often. And then for survivability, we have the 2 points in the Anima, so it costs less health, 3 points in Bone Armor for the Bone Armor, 2 points in Plated Bone for the effective Bone Armor, and 3 points in Apostasy for the extended duration of Bone Armor. For Bone Curse, we use this to buff our Bone Golem. He gets a lot of increased physical damage from this. So we got 5 points in Conflation, 3 points in Crippling Anguish, 2 points in Cultivist Fervor, 5 points in Merciless, which is what gives our minions physical damage increase of 50%. Of course, we're going to be using on the Bone Golem, so with 4 points in Spiked Bones and then 1 point in Barbed Construct, he has a 200% increased effect from this, which gives him 150% increased minion physical damage, and the Bone Shatter is a physical spell, so this is really helpful for him. For Dreadshade, we have this so that it's set up to only affect our Bone Golem, and then on top of that, it's going to give him a ton of damage, a ton of attack speed, and give him a guaranteed 100% crit chance, which is huge. So we got 3 points in Flesh Harvest, 2 points in Spectral Presence, 1 point in Lone Watcher, so that it will no longer drain the health. Instead, our Bone Golem will take additional damage, but it's okay, he can take it. He gets lots and lots of leech, and this increases the shade duration by 100%, so instead of 20 seconds, it will now now last 40 seconds, which is super helpful since it will have an 18-second cooldown. 3 points in Dying Coven and 1 point in Blind Fury is going to give increased attack speed to our Bone Golem. 4 points in Grim Fate gives him a ton of increased damage. Then we got 1 point in All for One for more damage. This will give it no aura buff, so we don't have to worry about it affecting us or other minions. It's just going to be just for the Bone Golem, but that's another more damage multiplier for him. 4 points in the Lingering Doom will give him some flat necrotic damage with his spells and attacks. The spells is what we're really after. And then the 1 point in Egoism is for the minion to always crit. For Rip Blood, we just want to be able to cast this as fast as possible. It's also going to buff our Bone Golem, and then at the same time we turned it to Necrotic and give it as much cast speed as possible. And because we want it to hit our minion, we have to make it be able to target our minions. So we've got 3 points in the Hemomancer, 5 points in Quenching, and then 1 point in the Marrow Drinker allows us to target minions with it. 2 points in Mana Feast to get some mana back. Mana isn't really an issue in this, but this is going to allow you to just spam it over and over again. 1 point in Hematology for the health restored per intelligence, since we are stacking some intelligence on this build. 2 points in Arcane Absorption and 1 point in Rip Spirit so that we convert it over to Necrotic. We do not put a point in Arcane Fortress for, instead of getting health, to get ward instead, because we do want it to replenish our health, and then we're converting that health into ward anyways with every cast. So it's just nice to keep your health full as well as to retain ward from the Twisted Heart afterwards. If you're not running the Twisted Heart, you can go ahead and switch it over to Arcane Fortress if you'd like. 1 point in Eviscerate for that blood splatter for an additional hit onto our minion, which will then proc another Bone Shatter. 2 points in Crimson Flood, 1 point in Blood Infusion to give our minion 15% more damage, another more modifier for him. 1 point in Infused Frenzy for increased attack speed for him, and then the Hemo Fancy to give him some physical leech, as he is doing physical damage with his hits and with the Bone Shatter, which is a physical spell. So that's a lot of leech for him, really increases his survivability. Doesn't really need it, but it is nice when he takes big hits to replenish all of his life in just a couple of hits after that. You can take these points out and run Splatter instead to get 2 of the blood splatters, but 1 seemed like enough for this build. And then for the bread and butter, the Summon Bone Golem, we have him with 5 points in Amalgam of Mages, so he has more spell damage. Again, Bone Shatter is a spell, it is physical. 5 points in Bone Hail so that when he gets hit by either an enemy or by us, he has a 25% chance to retaliate with Bone Shatter. This also does more Bone Shatter damage. 1 point in Flight of the Firmers gives Bone Shatter the ability to pierce as well as increase speed and range, and then 1 point in Betrayal so that it's a triple Bone Shatter chance from ally hits, which means we will have a 75% chance whenever we hit him with Rip Blood, Blood Splatter, what have you, for him to retaliate. So this one's definitely needed. Then we got 1 point in Amalgam of Sentinels, 1 point in Tower of Bones, and 1 point in Fragments of Fallen. These 3 are not necessarily needed, but we just took them. 1 point in Unnatural Speed to unlock the Hunger. The 5 points in Hunger is huge. This is really what you're going to want for survivability. And what this does is it gives the minion as well as you 65 life plus an additional life for every 2 vitality that you have. For us, we have about 27 vitality, so this gives us 13 more life. So we're getting 78 life every time that the Bone Golem gets a hit. He is getting that health as well, but he doesn't matter. He's got plenty of leech, so it's fine. But for us, it's really nice, which means when the Bone Golem, we hit him with Rip Blood, the Blood Orb brings back health to us. Then the Rip Blood, which also hit the minion, causes him to Bone Shatter, which causes him to hit all the nearby enemies that are around him. Each one of those hits then also gives you health, and that's how you're going to see our health jump back to full basically every time that Bone Shatter goes off, as well as long as he's hitting enemies. And then with the Twisted Heart, you're converting a percentage of that into ward. So that's where the real survivability comes from, so make sure you get that 5 points in Hunger. For passives, we got 26 points in the Acolyte base class with 8 of them in Forbidden Knowledge, 1 in Mania of Mortality, 5 in Unnatural Preservation, which is going to give us that ward retention, as well as some Necrotic and Poison Resist, which is really nice, 4 points in Dark Rituals, and 8 points in Stolen Vitality for that increased health for us and the minion. For the Lich, we got 10 points with all 10 in Apocrypha. Now, we ourselves do some spell damage, so I've been debating on taking the Survival of the Cruel just so that we get some leech each from the spell that we're doing, but it's not much, and our survivability has been good without it, but you might think about putting some points in there. And then for the Necromancer, our mastered class, we have 77 points, with 8 of them in Risen Army, 10 of them in Cursed Blood, 5 in Reclamation of Souls for that ward retention, 8 points in 𝐻𝐢𝐿 so that our minion has armor shred chance, which is nice, just another more damage modifier on enemies once you get a few hits in, 8 points in Tyrant, 8 points in Cling to Life, 5 points in Frantic Summons, 5 points in River of Bones for all that crit chance, 10 points in 𝐒𝐭𝐬𝐦𝐿, and 10 points in Blades of the Forehand for that minion critical strike multiplier and his chill chance, which will just give you a little extra survivability to reduce enemies' attack speed and move speed. And then the minion cold damage, not a big deal there, but the crit multi is what we're really after. For the character sheet, you can see for the resistances, you want to get them capped out first. I'm still missing a bit of poison. I had a bad roll on that helm. Lightning's pretty close, and I'm just 1% shy on void. Again, you want to cap those. Those are probably the most important first. For defense, endurance isn't quite capped, but we're getting there. You will want it. And then we do have our 100% critical strike avoidance. For damage, your damage types don't really matter, but for the minion, you want some minion health, going to be super helpful. And then just as much minion damage, minion spell damage, minion physical damage as you can possibly get. As you can see here, we're at about 600% of the physical damage for him, 350% global minion damage for all types, and then for the minion spell damage, you can see we're sitting at almost 800% from. Again, that's going to go up when we give him the Bone Curse. You won't see it reflected on the character sheet, but he is getting a bit of a boost to it. For the inventory for this build, I went with a two-handed staff because the base of the staff gives you +1 to minion skills, which was just nice. The points not really needed, but you can also get a ton of cast speed with this, and then on it you can also get huge amounts of minion physical damage and minion spell damage, and both of those are very effective for increasing the damage of that bone shatter. For everything else, not really important. For the chest, just getting as much health for you. Increased armor is nice, but flat health for you and health for the minion is really it. There's no special fixes you're really looking for the minion. The main thing you want on the helm is just the base set. You want to have flat minion spell damage. That's going to be huge. You don't really care what's on it, but getting some minion critical strike chance, again, once you get Dreadshade to give that guaranteed crit, pretty pointless to get the minion critical strike chance. You don't really need it. The summon volatile zombies, just threw that on it because it had increased minion damage. Again, Vitality and Int are two perfectly good stats you could throw on this, which are very, very common. Again, I needed some poison resist, so this one had some on it. Again, not the tier I needed, but that's what I went for. Again, the most optimal here, you probably want Vitality, dual health on the suffixes, and then you can throw on Int or any sort of increase to skill level that gives you minion damage is also nice. The two uniques we're running is going to be Death Rattle. This is going to give you that Int, which is nice. It also gives you that minion critical strike multiplier, which is huge for the build. And then for the Twisted Heart of 𝐒𝐿𝐦𝐿, this gives you that % of current health converted into ward, which is really nice. It also gives you that +1 to necrotic spells, which we are using, as well as some increased cast speed, which is really nice. For idols, the main things you're basically looking for is just getting as much health, covering your resistances. There's not really anything you need for the golem itself. There's no idols that give Bone Shatter additional damage or Bone Golem additional damage, and there's nothing that's going to give you cast speed, which would be the main things that you're looking for. So just go for as much health and get the resistances that you need. For blessings, again, blessings not something you really have to worry about. Basically survivability and a little extra minion damage all you're going to get. So make sure you get the critical strike avoidance blessing from the Reign of Dragons. That's pretty universal general that you're going to need. You can get increased minion damage. Again, this one isn't a huge difference, so if you'd rather, you can definitely, if you cover your physical resist elsewhere as well, just get flat and increased armor, which will really boost your defense as well. And then I just went with more mana. Again, none of these are really needed, so you can pretty much pick any blessings that you want that you think will make your build feel better. And then for how to play the build, it's really simple. You just summon your Bone Golem out. He's going to start attacking enemies for you, and once he's attacking them, that's not going to be his main source of damage. It's going to be when he does his retaliation, which if you hit him with a Rip Blood, you'll see that he does. For him to get the guaranteed crits, you want to make sure that he always has a Dreadshade on him. So make sure that he always has Dreadshade on him, because that's going to be where he gets that guaranteed crit and does way more damage. And when he has that on him, the spell retaliation that he does, you can see it's hitting for 100k here. That's going to be 100% crit as well because it is the minion doing it, so that's huge. So make sure he always has Dread Shade on him. He's going to feel like crap without it. After that, you can teleport around, which is going to do the Rip Blood, of course. It's going to apply the Bone Curse to enemies, so they're going to take additional damage. That's why they're doing more. And then you can hit him with the Rip Blood, and you can see he's doing 200k plus. You don't have to manually cast Bone Curse, but you can. But again, Transplant's going to put it out there as well as a Rip Blood for you. And then just by casting that, he does just that massive amount of damage. You can see here that all of his hits that he's doing is also giving us all that health replenishment, and then you get ward off of that. So here you can see we're sitting at full health with 4 to 5k ward, which is pretty huge. Getting more int will give you a little extra retention, which will give you a little bit more. But that's really all it is. You just teleport around, use Dread Shade, make sure it's on him, and hit him with the Rip Blood. It's really that simple. Now, what gets annoying is when you're over here and you're running through echoes and he doesn't follow you, or he's still attacking something, or he just kind of lags behind. Again, the main thing we're going to want to change in the future is that experimental fix to have the minion teleport with you. Throwing that on is huge and makes it feel so much smoother because he'll just teleport with you every time. But again, it's bugged out right now to where he will do it, but after a few uses, his graphic goes elsewhere and it's super disorienting and annoying, and I just got tired of dealing with it. So once that's fixed, I think this build will really take off. But for now, that's going to be it. I'm going to leave you guys with some gameplay.